Hi, welcome to the System Logic podcast, one of our early season 1 episodes. I am honored here. This is Jason Lee, the host of the podcast, here with Dr. John Nelson. Dr. Nelson, welcome to the System Logic podcast. We are honored to have you here. For the audience out there that are not familiar with you, you're one of the co-founders of the Society of Hospital Medicine. You're a consultant. You've worked with hundreds, if not, over 400 hospitals on their programs. You weren't just one of the early pioneers, but you were like, golly, you coined the term nocturnist, from what I understand. So we're just thrilled to have you. You've been working on hospital medicine since the 80s, and I'd love to dive into that in our conversation today. Dr. Nelson, welcome to the show.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
We, as I said, love to talk with some of the folks that are true innovators in healthcare. Lately, there's been innovation in technology, but you were an innovation from a care delivery standpoint. Give us a little bit of background on your career path, some of the highlights that you found you love to talk about, or that are you found to be quite pivotal in your background as you've served the healthcare industry over the years.
Sure. So I finished internal medicine training in the 80s and I thought I might go on and do a fellowship in endocrinology, but I wanted a year or two to practice and consolidate my general medicine skills. I was looking for some other kind of work on a short-term basis.
Yep.
So ended up connecting with a friend who was a year ahead of me in residency. He had become a hospitalist, have that word, but he had become a hospitalist in the community hospital across town. He was the first one to do that.
Okay.
There. So he's one of the earliest hospitals in the country.
Yeah.
So I joined him after a year and intending to do it for a year or two and go on and return to fellowship training.
Mm-hmm.
But I found that I enjoyed it and I just never got around to pursuing the fellowship. I stayed in that hospital in Florida for a total of 12 years and then got connected with the hospital in Seattle, where I've been ever since, through the consulting work I do. So by virtue of being an early hospitalist and having a desire for connections with people doing the same work as I was doing, I would go to medical conferences and other places where I'd encounter other doctors and talk about the fact I have a practice that's it's limited to hospital patients. I don't even have an outpatient office.
Yeah.
And ask if they knew anybody doing the same thing.
Okay.
And they usually would say, no, never heard of that, but now hang on a minute, that sounds interesting.
Yeah.
Could you tell us about it? Because that might be a good thing for the hospital where I am.
Mm-hmm.
So that led to other hospitals calling to learn about this new idea, hospital-focused internal medicine practice.
Right.
And so I began consulting very informally at first, but the phone actually would ring more often and kept getting inquiries more and more frequently. I also wanted to find peers, as I mentioned.
Yeah.
And so this was in the 90s, before I had a computer or an email address. I would get the American Hospital Association directory. It's like a phone book, physical paper book they printed every year. And I would go through and call hospitals in large communities, knowing that occasionally I was going to find one that did have a hospital.
Okay.
And so there was not a word to use to describe these people, so I had to kind of, long story.
Describe it in a paragraph, if you will, right?
You have to know who to ask at the hospital, who's likely to know.
Right.
And be willing to engage for a minute and think about it.
Yeah.
And I found that every so often I would, in fact, they would say, oh, yes, you're talking about Dr. So-and-so, who's an internist that doesn't have an office. And so I'd say, yeah, I'd like to talk to that doctor. Can you page him or her? And minutes later, I'd be talking with this person. And every conversation for the first year or two would be the same. They would say, I've always wondered if anybody else was doing this.
That's right. Am I the only one?
Yes. I've never talked to somebody else that's had this role.
And
and I was usually interrupting them, and often I might be a short break between patient care, and we would usually sit and talk, and we needed to get on to other things, but we were having such a lively conversation, learning from each other, that we'd talk a long time. And I would always, as part of that conversation, I would say, it seems to me we should have our own medical society and get together in person and trade ideas about the best way to do this work.
Yeah.
So that led to me becoming connected with another hospitalist. His name's Win Whitcomb.
Okay.
And the two of us said, yeah, let's see if we can pull
Where
this
was Dr.
off.
Whitcomb located at the time?
He's in Massachusetts.
Okay. Okay.
And we said, yes, we should try to form
Little
a medical.
bi-coastal society with the Seattle and
I
the.
was in
Oh,
Florida
you were in Florida at
at
the
the
time.
time.
Okay. Yeah.
So, but yeah, we were far apart and had very different backgrounds that led us to become hospitalists.
Yeah.
But
It's interesting. It seems obvious now, the model, but at the time, a lot of physicians, they want to stay true to their training. They're a little bit, I don't want to say stuck in their ways, but definitely true to their training, and they might have been resistant to that type of thing.
Yes.
What were some of the conversations that you had with some of those internists and some of those even family practice physicians that would often go into the hospital? What were some of those like?
So there were, as you say, there were many doctors who said, the reason you're a primary care doctor or an internist or a family physician is to see the patient wherever they need care. So that's the hospital or the office or a nursing home, sometimes meeting them in the ED if they've shown up. And this hospitalist idea is disrupting that. It's a bad thing. So I think they had a point. But no one thrust the hospitalist model onto, at least that didn't happen often. There were a few places where either payers, insurance companies, or hospital executives were kind of heavy-handed and tried to push their traditionalists out of the hospital.
Yeah.
But what usually happened was primary care doctors were evaporated from the hospital.
Yes.
For many reasons. It just got to be too hard to do.
Not from the community per se, but they just weren't going to the hospital as frequently, or you're saying both in the community as well?
No, they were evaporating from the hospital.
Right,
They wanted to spend less time in the hospital. They're, in the 60s and 70s, that was probably the professional center of their activity where they felt most professionally engaged and valuable.
Right.
But by the 90s, the hospital was still an interesting place, but the demands in the office had become such that it was hard to ever be able to step away from the office. And so when you had someone who got sick in the middle of the day during office hours, you had this dilemma: do I leave patients waiting in the office or tell them to reschedule while I run back to the hospital? So there are a bunch of reasons why traditionalists didn't really want to do it anymore. So the reason hospitals took off, first and foremost, that, in my opinion,
I see.
it was the
need
we
for that.
something to replace the primary care doctors who were kind of quietly early in the 90s, but it was a gathering storm of them leaving the hospital.
Yeah.
People figured out that the stay tended to come down and that there were other efficiencies, and so that got healthcare executives to be cheerleaders for hospitals.
Sure.
Which in some ways was not good for the image of hospitals.
Oh,
but I think it's left the impression, many people looking at it today, or people who have had, began their career in the 80s like me, physicians, might have this opinion. Yes, it was this idea cooked up by healthcare executives and finance people, kind of thrust on the medical community. I really think that's not true at all. I think it never would have happened if it weren't for other trends in medicine that made it hard for the same doctor to cover both the office and the hospital.
Yeah.
That was the thing that changed.
Yeah.
And as many of the docs began electing to reduce their hospital activity, focus more on the office, something had to give. And then we've seen that happen in many other specialties. Psychiatry, essentially the same thing. Neurology, very few or so many neurologists that do both office and hospital anymore. And that happened over a period of 2 or 3 years. They very
once they
quickly
saw you guys doing it the right way, then they decided, hey, that's not a bad model.
So it's an idea that's been adopted at least to some degree by almost every specialty.
Yeah, no, fantastic. And golly, that was many years ago. And the creation of course, the society, not unlike what we would consider sort of a social network today, but you didn't have any of the tools, right? Very early on. Tell us a little bit about how that happened. Were you just making phone calls, or you just say, hey, find 5 people that do the same thing nearby you and let's invite them to the thing? How did that whole all come together?
Well, initially just making phone calls, like I said, often cold calling a hospital.
Yeah.
But throwaway medical publications began writing about this, often made it their cover story, and that would prompt I would get interviewed quite often for those things.
Okay.
Newspapers in large urban areas would make a cover story quite often. That would make the phone ring. So it's sort of we didn't have the social network as we think of them today, but
Yeah.
there were network effects that made it easier for people to find me.
Yeah.
And my colleague and some others. It was Win
Yeah.
Wickham, and I certainly didn't invent the field or single-handedly create SHM. We were the founders, but there were an awful lot of other people.
Always, yeah. It takes a village. It takes a village for sure.
But it was largely word of mouth early on. Interestingly, it's really the same way American College of Emergency Physicians founded. So there's really two specialties in medicine that were invented by community physicians, later adopted by academia. ED medicine and hospital medicine.
Right, okay.
Nearly any other specialty, maybe you could say hospice, similar, but most specialties are invented by academicians who have research interests.
Yes.
And so they learn some new thing that they begin doing in their major academic center, and then it disseminates for the community over time. So ED medicine, hospital medicine share many parallels.
Yeah.
And so to start the Society of Hospital Medicine, one of the things I was keen to do is learn more and more about how ED medicine. And so I actually talked to the founder of the College of Emergency Physicians. That was started in the 60s.
Right.
I spoke to him in the 90s, and it was remarkable how done the same thing.
Very similar pathway. Yeah.
And the starting SHM was the thing that caused me to start email. I got an AOL.
Well, there's a reason. Yeah, there's some precipitating event always for something like that. And was there a moment when you felt like, okay, this is definitely taken off. This SHM is definitely taken off, and this specialty is definitely or was it just like so obvious at the time that it was just going to be a linear exponential growth path?
My personality is always don't get overexcited. This could go away at any point. So it took a long time for me to really have confidence this was really going to continue. But it built up quickly.
I imagine.
From probably, I first began doing consulting work, telling other hospitals about this new form of practice in about 1995. And by 2000, I feel like I could have done it time if I wanted to. But I was more interested in patient care. I didn't want to give that up. So I've done patient care over 30 years.
Okay.
Just under.
Right. And are you still pretty active in the society? Are you an emeritus board member these days? What's your role with the society?
No official title like that, but I'm engaged. But the society is managed by about 60 people who work in Philadelphia. But at the beginning, my colleague and I did most things ourselves. We have a monthly publication called The Hospitalist. And the first few issues of that I typed on my PC at home after work. And
my goodness,
my wife and I would print it and fold it up. And, so I don't do any of that. So
None of that anymore. Okay.
I'm very interested. I go to all the meetings. There's another national meeting of the organization in 2 weeks.
Right.
But I don't have a title, which is fine. There's new, energetic people who are doing a great job.
Fair enough. And so I understand that you still do a little bit of consulting. Tell us a little bit about that, and then what else do you fill your time with? Are you getting close to retirement, or what else do you fill your time with?
So I did retire from patient care a few years ago.
Okay.
And since then, I have continued to work at my hospital in the Seattle area.
Okay.
As a medical director on a part-time basis, and I have continued to do consulting, which I still enjoy, and do a variety of projects. Early on when I was doing consulting, the goal was always to get a new program off the ground.
Right.
And I began to worry by about 2003 or 2005. Well, every place is going to have one. There'll be no new
de novos.
Yeah. And I thought that would be the end of my consulting career.
Yeah.
But for the last 20 plus years, the majority of the work I've done has been with existing hospitals.
Oh, yeah.
To assess operations. Often it's what I think of as a well baby visit. There's nothing broken with the program. It's just a desire to see if the head circumference and tracking according to the industry benchmarks.
Right. And you're focusing on optimizing performance, maybe wellness of the team members, maybe quality metrics, those sorts of things that you're working on?
Yes.
Okay.
Not the patient, not directly
not the patient
care,
but
not the sepsis
physicians,
protocol
right?
per se, but operate.
Okay.
kind of work schedule they have, roles for a
Right.
compensation model.
Okay. And have you gotten a chance to develop programs internationally? I understand that
Very
there's
little,
some
a small
interest out
amount,
there.
yes.
Okay. Okay.
Mainly remotely. I've talked with people in a bunch of different countries,
Yeah.
including Saudi Arabia,
Sure.
Australia, and other places, Brazil. And I find that very interesting. Most countries always had a separation between doctors who see patients in the hospital and office.
Okay.
The
So it's much more
U.S.
common in foreign countries than it was here in the States.
So they didn't call it hospitals. It was just the way they did things. They'd never given. There was no one who 100 years ago decided, is it better to have the same doctor seeing the hospital and the office, or
Yeah.
should we separate them? Nobody thought about that. They just evolved differently.
Yeah.
And in the U.S., it evolved to the same doctor covering both sites.
Yeah.
But, it turns out the U.S. was a little bit unusual when
Okay.
you look at developed countries and the way their health systems work. Most of them, it varies. It's not really black and white, but my sense is the rest of the world has tended to separating hospital.
I see. I see.
Practice.
Now, I had heard and read that you coined the term nocturnist. Is that true, and how did that come about?
So that's a joke.
That's a joke. Okay.
When I would go around explaining new hospitalist programs,
Yeah.
often I would go to speak at a medical staff of a hospital somewhere.
Yeah.
And I knew that some people there were not happy about this idea, and I was going to get some pushback. And so
Yeah,
I
yeah.
wanted to try to put people at ease. So I would try to make some jokes about the word hospitalist. In fact, that word also, for the first few years, had sounded like a joke also. And I think,
Right.
honestly, Bob Wachter, who is credited with coining that word in the New England Journal, it was sort of tongue-in-cheek. And I'm not sure he gave much thought to whether it would
It just rolled off the tongue,
remain
though, you know.
whether it would stick in our lexicon or not.
Yeah.
And so I found it funny that people were applying IST to the end of so many different job descriptions, like sniffist.
Mm-hmm.
And so the nocturnist sounded funny.
Yeah.
Internist working at night, nocturnal internist. So I would use that in my talk, and that would reliably get a laugh.
Yeah.
And
Who knew?
people don't laugh anymore. It's just a word.
I will tell you, I remember for the audience, when I started my consulting career many years ago, that we were told to use the terms hospitalist and nocturnist, and we use the Society of Hospital Medicine for lots of statistics and analytics and whatnot. And so I credit to you for the early part of my career. So
Very good.
appreciate that.
You still do use.
Yeah,
SHM
and still do.
resources.
Yeah, and still do. Well, we've been enjoying the conversation here. We'll take a little break, and we'll be right back. Well, we're back here with Dr. John Nelson. John, we've been talking a little bit about the history of the specialty. I know you have consulted with a lot of hospitals and seen a lot of different departments across the country, and as you mentioned, a little bit internationally as well. When you're assessing some of these programs, what are you looking for? How do you evaluate a well-performing program versus a not well-performing program? And how has that maybe changed over the last 10, 15, 20 years since you've really locked in your practice?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things that to me are markers of a high-performing program that you can check for pretty quickly. One is asking the lead hospitalist what their most important duty is. And disappointingly, often when I ask that, some group leaders, they have to pause and think a while, and they will not uncommonly say, well, it's making the schedule. And so I think that's kind of a weak point. I mean, it's true that you have to have a schedule or the wheels will fall off immediately. It certainly doesn't have to be the leader actually making the schedule.
Mm-hmm.
Another marker is asking the other hospitalists in the group, the non-leaders in the group, things about the performance of the program.
Mm-hmm.
So I might just ask how the hospital or your hospitalist group is doing on readmissions,
Mm-hmm.
or like the stay management or the patient satisfaction. And I'll ask those, and at some places, the hospitals say, oh, yeah, we hear about that sometimes. I can't remember.
Mm-hmm.
Ask the lead.
Mm-hmm.
About that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's not great. That's
The fact that they can't speak to those metrics
Yes.
like off the top of their head almost, right?
yes,
Yeah.
and they think of themselves, well, I need to be a great doctor and know who needs antibiotics, who really needs admission and when they can be discharged.
Mm-hmm.
That's my job, and I do agree that is the number one job.
Mm-hmm.
But I think a truly high performing practice is one in which the all the clinicians in the practice feel like they own that business unit.
Mm-hmm.
They own their own business. So
Mm-hmm.
even if they don't, in so many cases they're employed by a hospital, they don't own their practice.
Yeah.
But they certainly own its performance, and it's more than anybody else. They own the performance of the practice and the perception of their customers.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of thinking themselves as just punching the clock and needing to have clinical expertise,
Mm-hmm.
if they think of themselves as also needing to make contributions to the overall success of their group, of
Mm-hmm.
their hospitalist group, it's you can tell the difference.
Yeah.
You go to a place where the hospitalists kind of have that mindset, or a meaningful portion of it. And I think that's a little bit of an Achilles heel
Mm-hmm.
in our field, and
Mm-hmm.
maybe many others, that there's been a drift toward thinking of ourselves as, I just work.
You're just a cog.
I just work here.
Yeah.
And I have significant responsibility. I to be a very great doctor, but I just work. I work my shift. I come in. This is my list of patients. I got to take good care of them.
Yeah.
That's it for my job.
Yeah.
And I think that's unfortunately narrow and actually will not result in as much career satisfaction
Mm.
as people who engage more deeply in related issues, like could be clinical matters. Understand your group's strengths and weaknesses around management of a certain common condition. Like,
Mm-hmm.
are you really up to date on management of thromboembolic disease? Could invest in that as a hospitalist. Take that on. I think you'd find great professional satisfaction. Your group would be better off.
Yeah.
Might be one who dives into the business of the cost to operate, really understand the your program's budget, cost center, how much revenue comes from professional fees versus contributed by the hospital.
Yeah.
You might become a coding expert. You
Mm-hmm.
become the patient satisfaction expert. But if you have a group that has lots of experts like that, that's going to be a much higher performance.
So what I'm hearing you say is that level of engagement with those physicians, be above and beyond just simply trying to be high quality physicians, but being really a driver or an owner of some element of the group is a key differentiating factor. It sounds like.
Yeah. Another example might be, say something's not working well in the hospital. Say the surgeons are dumping on the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes comes up, and some hospital groups will say, "We've told the CMO about that 5 times, and he still hasn't fixed it."
Right.
I think that's the way they've conceived of that problem is a weakness. They need to say, this is our problem. The surgeons are dumping on us. What can we do? We may need to engage the support and help with the CMO. It might be very important to do that. But they shouldn't just drive by the CMO's office and drop this problem on that person's desk and wait for a solution. They should be engaged in seeking solutions themselves. And I'm not suggesting that every hospitalist should work a half-time job doing something outside of patient care.
Mm-hmm.
Not at all. Making small investments, things that improve the performance and operations of the group, I think terrific satisfaction.
Yeah.
And makes for a more engaging career. It likely reduces the risk of burnout. Even if it does require additional time invested.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
There's even some research to support that you have some time to pursue the things that matter most to you.
Yeah.
Less likely. So devoting some time to things outside of just the patients on your list, I think is worthwhile thinking about. If you just had twins and you're going through a divorce, there could be reasons why you wouldn't do any of that. Just seeing the patients on your list for the next couple of years, maybe that itself is a pretty tall order.
Yeah.
So that's fine. You absolutely make adjustments.
Yeah.
But over the course of your whole career, thinking of things, work outside or activity outside of the patients on your list as out of bounds or I'm only going to do that if somebody pays me extra for that. I think that's not great for your own practice.
So, many of our listeners are physicians, but many of our are also on the administrative side. And so some of the coaching and maybe a little bit of free consulting here today, like what do you tell or how do you speak to some of the administrative leaders out there that are maybe struggling with a little bit of what you're talking about, some of the personalities that aren't getting as fully engaged? Are there a couple of tricks that you've come across or tactics that you feel like are good to help try to continue to engender some of that engagement with the physicians?
Well, nothing probably terribly novel for hospitalists, standard things. So there's plenty of hospitalist leaders and hospitalist groups who are hitting home runs, and they're doing a great job.
Absolutely.
But it's common that a hospitalist leader is well liked and smart and a good doctor and has great personal attributes and just a fine person, but many of them might tend to wait for someone to ask them to address a problem. So it's the CMO who's going to first see this new data on readmissions and present that to the lead hospitalist, who will then have a thoughtful conversation about it. But the lead hospitalist will so often let it remain the CMO's job to bring that up the next time or decide where to go from here or to close the loop on this thing they thought should get done. And the lead hospitalist doesn't take that ball and run with it. And I think if you're the lead hospitalist, that's kind of your job.
Yeah.
The one thing that not that many lead hospitalists in my experience do, but I think all should consider, is taking ownership for the group's performance in the form of leading for example, quarterly, 2 months perhaps, performance review of the hospitalist program. So the lead hospitalist is in charge of that and reviews data, whatever the key metrics are that the hospitalists themselves and the hospitalist program cares about. I think CMOs should try to get the lead hospitalist in their group, hospitalist group they're responsible for, to take ownership for the group's performance. It should be the lead hospitalist and maybe his or her lieutenants who manage the performance, understand the performance data, usually before others have seen it, or at least they've thought about it more deeply than others. And then every 2 or 3 months, the lead hospitalist goes in front of the CMO and perhaps the medical group leader, 2 or 3 leaders in the organization. So I think the lead hospitalists everywhere should consider taking ownership for the group's performance by leading a review of the group's performance that is presented by that lead hospital. Presented to other hospital leaders like the CMO, perhaps the CEO, other executives at the hospital. And it's the lead hospitalist who keeps track of the performance metrics that we should discuss and review at this meeting. Somebody else is probably going to gather that data and provide it to the lead hospitalist. But the lead hospitalist would, through it, think about why the performance is as it is, think about what efforts have been considered or undertaken previously to try to improve performance. Did they work or did they fail? And then get in front of the other hospital executives and say, look, we want to support the hospital's readmission goal. The hospital had a CMS penalty, though, and we'd like to get that down to the no penalty zone. And we have tried X, Y, and Z around readmissions, but the hospitalist group thinks that this other thing will be useful, and we're going to need some support from the hospital to get that up and running. So let's talk about that.
Right.
And so it's possible hospital executives would say no, and here's an alternative, and there'd be some back and forth. But the picture I'm trying to paint is that the lead hospitalist is leading that meeting. Most places I go, it's the opposite. The lead hospitalist is relatively passive. They show up in a meeting to discuss performance metrics. Could be anything: hospitalist turnover, recruiting, a new compensation plan, whatever. The hospitalist shows up and is thoughtful and collaborative. But it's really someone else driving the ship. And you should try and change that and get the lead hospitalist to own it. few places I've been where that's what's happening.
Yeah.
Hospitals' morale is
Yeah.
higher, palpably higher. The feeling that they're doing something meaningful. They don't uh, seem to be as downtrodden or feel as much of a victim as hospitalists in many places
Yeah.
sometimes feel. So I think it's a really valuable thing to lead hospitalists own quarterly performance,
Yeah.
2-month performance review, have responsibility for getting that organized, deciding what we're going to talk about, and
Yeah.
presenting it to others, and then collaborating with others about what to do with these things.
I think that's great, some great wisdom, and I think you're right. You know, having those leaders engaging in that way is really a key lever in that process. Do you think, looking back over the decades, that perspective has been pervasive for a while, or is that something that has maybe been more of a recent phenomenon, you think? Or, I'm not trying to get into a generational debate here or anything like that, but is that something that you experienced, in the 90s and early 2000s, and now you didn't for a while, or how has that changed over time?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think there has been a drift toward hospitalists thinking themselves as just somebody who works here.
Mm-hmm.
So partly people, physicians finishing training the last 10, 15 years, very few of them think about joining a practice or
Mm-hmm.
hanging out a shingle.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have a CV, they have a resume.
Yeah.
They are looking for a job.
Yeah.
They might prefer
Yeah.
to being in private practice. But I think that being employed by a large company that might employ hospitalists across many locations or being employed by a local hospital,
Yeah.
either way, there's still value in maintaining the mindset of this is our practice.
Yeah.
Because it's your department.
It is.
It is, you don't have complete autonomy. You can't just give yourself a raise. You
Right.
can't- there are guardrails or boundaries, but you have a lot of leeway
Mm-hmm.
to create the culture and performance that seek. There can be barriers. If you have a hospital that's support adequate staffing, for example, that's a problem.
Mm-hmm.
But that's, in my experience, not the hospital presenting barriers for the hospital.
Yeah.
That does happen. There's some hospitals, the way they operate, the way the HR is, things like that really are
Yeah.
meaningful barriers.
Yeah.
But I think any hospitalist group, though, could look for ways to claim level of autonomy available
Yeah.
and grasp a sense of practice.
Yeah. Yeah. And I do want to come back to some of the barriers that you mentioned, but as you think about the hospital physician and how they're compensated and how they're rewarded for what they do, has that significantly changed? I know we were talking before the podcast, and you were saying something to the kin of, it's got to be super simple, otherwise we're not gonna know what the heck you're talking about. And so talk a little bit about how in your mind rewards have been set for hospitalists, and are they set well today, and should there be some changes around that? Because I think that could impact engagement, right? That incentives do lead to engagement, right, in some degree.
Yes, and I have become convinced there is not an ideal or perfect compensation model.
Okay.
It's a matter of understanding trade-offs
Mm-hmm.
and um, and adopting a model that you think best fits your needs and culture.
Okay.
Um, I entered practice in the '80s, and there were essentially, effectively, no employed physicians.
Right.
And
Right.
so they were all physicians essentially were uh, paid on their own productivity.
Mm-hmm.
There were some variations on that theme, but that was essentially the way doctors earn their compensation. And I think there's value in that. That allows a lot of flexibility, paid on productivity. But I think that, that's not an entirely production-based compensation model now. I think while I still see great value in it, I think it's probably not practical anymore.
Yeah.
As the mindset of physicians or hospitalists has, in my view, drifted a little bit toward somebody that primarily I'm a person that just works here.
Yeah.
Um, I think that doesn't pair well with a 100% productivity compensation.
Right. Right.
So
right.
it's most common that hospitals are compensated largely with
Shift
a fixed
basis.
amount.
Yeah.
A fixed amount might be an annual salary paid the same every 2 weeks, or it might be a rate per shift. Rate could vary depending on the type of shift.
Yeah.
Um, and that's is the bulk of compensation at most places. Then there are two other smaller elements. One of those two is production. Often that's comes to about 5 or 10% of what the hospitals earn over
Okay.
the whole year.
Okay.
And then another 5%, 5 or 10%, some percent of annual compensation might come in the form of payment for performance on a handful of metrics.
Okay. Okay.
And I think that's reasonable. Any compensation model can be gained by the physician. Any compensation model, I think, will have potentially undesirable
Externalities,
side
right?
effects.
Side effects, right? Yeah.
But I think that one is a practical compromise.
Yeah.
It's common so that the hospitalists are accustomed, and the place they worked before would have had a model similar to that most likely. So it's easiest to implement.
Yeah.
So I think that's a
Now,
approach.
was that similar to, I mean, were shift compensation prevalent in the 90s as well, or do we have a little bit of a chicken and egg problem? You talked about how the expectation is something closer to 80, 90, even 100% shift-oriented compensation. Is that the chicken or is that the egg here?
Well, I'm not sure. When you say shift oriented, you mean production compensation?
Well, if back in the 90s, let's say when a lot of these programs were being developed, initiated, was compensation primarily based on just a shift, your 12 on, 12 off, or 24-hour shift, or what have you, regardless of performance / productivity / quality measures. And if that is the case, is it your opinion that maybe that's the chicken, or is that the egg, vis-a-vis how the physicians that are going into hospital medicine are viewing themselves more as cogs and less as owners, right? If they weren't incentivized to be owners early on.
So the initial compensation models, when the field began taking off, were divided. There was most often as a fixed annual compensation, paid the same every 2 weeks. That was really common. Or a rate per shift, which is quite similar.
Yep. The thinking being that you weren't sure if it was going to be really busy or really slow or what have you, but you're going to the same place. You're covering floors 3 and 4, and that's it. And so there you go.
Yeah, and everyone had a lot of uncertainty. The doctors were going to need some kind of assurance.
Yeah.
So I think that was a perfectly reasonable thing to do. I think that probably has not had a significant effect on kind of culture or what I see. And I think people will dispute this. Not everyone would agree with me.
Sure.
I think at least in some places, there's I just work here. Nobody listens to me. I have to be a great doctor. When it comes to staffing level we need, how many patients see, things like that.
Yeah.
I think that is not a direct result of the compensation model. I don't think our model had a lot.
Okay. You had mentioned earlier a little bit about of course, the introduction and proliferation of technology, EHRs, et cetera, over time. A lot of our listeners are interested in the intersection of healthcare and technology and how technology is used primarily from an administrative standpoint, but talk a little bit about how hospital medicine has changed for the better or for the worse with the introduction of technology. And, the term that's on everybody's lips these days is AI. Is AI going to be something that's helpful for hospitalists going forward here in the future?
Yeah, so my answer to that for the last few years has been, I think it will make us more efficient.
Technology broadly and AI specifically.
Yeah, I guess AI more specifically. But
the
technology iterating should hopefully getting better. Although it hasn't made us more efficient yet. It's mainly made us less efficient. Hopefully that will change. But what I see with AI is that we, like other specialties, physicians of any stripe,
Mm-hmm.
should be able to spend somewhat less time documenting.
Of course. Yeah.
Which should make us more efficient. There are some time motion studies of how hospitalists spend their time, and I sort of do thought experiments about that all the time,
Yeah.
making my own opinion. My general sense is that in today's hospital, a typical daytime hospitalist shift,
Mm-hmm.
that doctor is using the skills and knowledge acquired in training,
Mm-hmm.
real clinical medicine,
Mm-hmm.
maybe an hour or two out of a 12-hour shift.
Oh,
Other 10 or so hours is really clerical work,
wow.
administrative work, that much of which is tangentially medical.
Yeah. That's a rough ratio. My goodness.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's terrible.
Yeah.
And we need to improve that.
Yeah.
And I think AI might help get us there.
Okay.
I also think, though, that with every improvement AI might offer, there's challenges. Saying nothing that's novel. There's people who can say it much better than me.
Yeah.
But the thought that I've always had is, for example, if we have AI scribes that listen to the whole conversation of the patient, which we already have, it's in place.
Yeah. It's
not,
pretty well deployed.
Yeah. Not inside hospitals that often. Mostly an outpatient setting.
Okay.
But it'll come to hospitals soon enough. And my concern is that can make us more efficient,
Mm-hmm.
but it may mean that we don't think quite as deeply about this case.
Yeah.
We kind of relax and let the AI. So that's a real problem that
Yeah.
other smarter people will be on top of, I think, and
Yeah.
try to help us navigate. Other thing that I worry about, though, the best illustration I have of my concern is, can you imagine in a few years, I meet with a hospital executive who says, "Oh, Dr. Nelson, thank you. Glad you're here for your annual review. Let's review this metric and that one. And now let's talk about how you relate to patients." And we see that you use 2.1 empathy words in each encounter. And our goal here is 2.6 empathy words.
Yeah. Oh, interesting.
So,
Interesting.
And we see that you interrupted the patient in,
Right.
46 seconds, which is way better than the typical condition. But we'd like you to wait a minute and a half.
Interesting.
The potential for very granular,
Yeah.
even oppressive management. I've read about UPS drivers some years ago.
Yeah.
And they're told which hand to use to open the door.
Right.
They're not allowed to choose the route.
Too many left turns, kind of thing. Yeah. Yeah.
But even minutia of how to pull the seatbelt over them. They return to the cab, save half a second and across.
Wow. Right.
Millions of entry and exit
deliveries.
to the vehicle.
Yeah.
That's going to save UPS.
That is interesting. That is interesting.
I think that will be soul crushing, and that's another thing that I think we'll need to manage. The issue of our vigilance in reading the notes the AI generates and relying on recommendations AI might make.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really complicated. That's going to require, at least as I conceive it, that's going to require very smart people doing research and designing the tools to make sure we have to pay attention and do better than self-driving cars by just looking at your eyeballs.
My goodness.
Apparently that's not perfect.
Yeah.
So we'll need something really effective, and I don't know what it is. But I think we ourselves, the clinicians, the people doing the work, should have a lot of say about how much micromanaging
I think
is
that's
appropriate.
Fair. Yeah.
And I hopefully I'm worried about something problem, but
Yeah.
But if every word I say is tracked and measured, and
Right.
there's certainly the opportunity to get very granular about the kind of conversations I have.
That is true. That is true. There's no doubt that you've gotten a chance to, play with some of the tools and platforms out there. Have you gotten a chance to test things like more recent, like Open Evidence or even the Hippocratic AI and some of these predictive clinical tools?
I've not used Hippocratic AI. That is,
Okay.
That is outpatient nursing.
Oh, more of an
encounters, I
outpatient.
think.
Okay.
But OpenAI, yes, I use regularly. Stunningly useful.
Yeah,
and
I
effective.
can imagine. And so, what are some of your predictions for the next couple of years with some of this? Obviously, you had said that you worry about a little bit of the micromanagement piece, but but how will your particular field and maybe broadly the field of medicine, do you think, change much over the next couple of years with these tools?
I bet you over the next 2 years,
Yeah.
not a lot.
Okay.
For
Okay.
hospitals. That these things will probably take longer than you think.
Yeah.
My opinion should not be regarded as an expert in AI, certainly. And I can give a plug for my friend Bob Wachter, who coined the word hospitalist at UCSF. He just wrote a book
Okay.
about AI in healthcare
Yes.
called Giant Leap. He goes through a lot of very interesting stories.
And I did hear him on another interview, and he was talking a little bit about how some of the descaling might occur,
Yes.
right, from the use of AI, and that was quite interesting, right? I mean, how do you go through, years and decades of training, and then you start applying AI, and boy, it feels like you're losing something. It's like leaking out your head.
Even when I finished training in the 80s, I don't know how this happened, but even in the 80s, EKG machines could do a pretty good job of reading the EKG.
Yeah.
I still don't know how they did that long ago without really AI.
Yeah.
It was not perfect, but it was pretty good.
Yeah.
And I realized I would get de-skilled if I just relied on that. And I saw many older doctors, they clearly weren't really reading the tracing. They were looking at what the machine said.
Yeah.
Not the cardiologist, doctors and a lot of other specialties. And I didn't want to be that person. I knew I would lose the ability to read EKGs.
Yeah.
So this was in the 80s, I read a lot of EKGs. I would cover up the computer reading. I would very quickly go
quiz
through
yourself a little bit.
reading on my own.
Yeah.
And I felt like I stayed sharp. I didn't do that last years in my career. I was not reading nearly as G's.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but I didn't as reliably do that as reliably. I can tell you, as a good an EKG reader, even though decades of experience, I was losing, a lot of my edge.
Wow.
And I think AI will amplify that problem manyfold.
Yeah.
Or has the risk of amplifying.
Hopefully it does advance us more than it de-skills us, but
it's our job to make sure that's exactly what happens.
Exactly. Well, Dr. Nelson, thank you so much for joining us today. Really very interesting conversation and sharing your wisdom with me and the audience, and appreciate you having us today.
Nice talking with you, Jason. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, that's our episode for today on the System Logic Podcast, sponsored by Simplify. Again, I'm Jason Lee. I want to thank Dr. John Nelson for joining us. We talked through, the early parts of hospital medicine, some of his work developing the Society of Hospitalists or hospital medicine, and some of the really interesting things going on as we develop programs across the country and in hospitals medicine. And so, John, again, want to thank you for joining us. And if you want to hear more conversations like the one we had today, please like and subscribe to System Logic Podcast, and we'll see you next time.